Peering past the frosted pane of the cabin window, she saw a shadow plummet through the swirling white chaos. A massive draft horse had stumbled and fallen near the woodpile, its rider thrown into a chest-high drift, a still lump in the maelstrom. Her son, Finn, a boy of 9, instinctively reached for the door latch. "Mama, we have to go out there." Jessa pushed him back. "No, not in this gale. The snow will swallow him." But the inert figure, already disappearing beneath the fresh fall, moved her more than her fear. She pulled on Thomas's old canvas coat. "Finn, grab the rope. Alara, you push from the snowbank. We have to get him inside the cabin now." The wind was a cruel, icy hand, tearing at their faces, the snow blinding. They reached the man, a stranger clad in heavy wool and leather, his skin already taking on the ghastly blue of deep cold. He was monumental, a weight of granite and frozen gear. The children worked with desperate, frantic energy. Finn pulled the heavy rope around the man's shoulders, straining until his face was scarlet, while Alara, her smaller frame braced against the slick snow, pushed the dead weight from behind. Jessa lifted his legs, directing their struggle. "He's like stone," Finn gasped, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Keep pulling, just a few more feet," Jessa urged. Together, their small hands burning from the cold and the sheer friction, they hauled the man across the frozen yard. They wrestled him through the main cabin door and collapsed him onto the floor of the small back room where Thomas's things still hung. Jessa sank down, her chest heaving, then noticed the man's right hand. His fist was clenched around a small, tarnished metal locket. She gently worked it free. Inside, 2 faded portraits, a young woman and a toddler, a family. "Finn, start melting snow for water," she ordered, her mind snapping into focus. "Alara, get every blanket. Hurry." She worked through the long, dark hours, forcing hot broth between his lips, fighting the fever that pulsed beneath his skin like a drum. Outside, the great blizzard of '98 raged. By the time the first gray light crept under the door, his breathing was deep and even. Jessa secured the latch from the outside, a necessary precaution, and stumbled toward the main room. 3 days later, the stranger's eyes fluttered open. They were a startling clear gray, fixing on the rough-hewn ceiling beams. Finn and his little sister Alara were peering around the doorway. "You're alive," Finn announced. Jessa entered, carrying a chipped bowl of steaming corn soup, her expression tired but guarded. "Stay put. You've been out 3 days." The man tried to push himself up. "Where am I?" "My claim. Near the town of Oakhaven." She nodded toward the children. "They dragged you out of the storm." He looked at the small faces, his own hardening slightly. "I need to leave." Jessa walked to the main cabin door and slid it open. A wall of pristine, crystalline snow stood over her head. "Not a chance. The pass is blocked. You're our guest for the duration." The man's jaw tightened. "Trapped." "Your horse, the big one," Finn said quietly. "It broke its leg. We had to put it down." Something profound and painful shifted in the man's eyes. He turned his head away. Jessa pulled up a stool. "You'll stay until the spring thaw clears the Three Forks Road. Then you ride on." "My name is Roland," he stated, finally looking at her. "And I don't belong here. I bring complications." Complications arrived the morning. "My husband Thomas was killed by a mountain lion 2 years ago," Jessa countered, her spine stiffening. "We've endured worse than a quiet man recovering in our home." A week passed. Roland was on his feet, proving surprisingly adept at practical repairs. He fixed the loose hinge on the outer door first, then the wobbly kitchen table, small quiet acts of restitution. One night after supper, Jessa made him sit at the main table. "Rest." After the children were asleep, they sat by the fire. "They took my family," Roland began, his voice a low rumble. "Pneumonia? I was prospecting in the Black Hills. Came back to a burial plot. Been moving ever since." Jessa stopped her mending. "Thomas died defending this land claim from a greedy merchant out of Canyon Creek. Shot him in the back. The town elders said I should marry again." "Why didn't you?" "Because I will not let other people write my life story." Roland allowed himself a genuine fleeting smile. "You're a stubborn woman. It's kept us alive," she retorted. You're still here, aren't you? There's another reason I travel alone, Roland confessed. I witnessed a killing in the Wyoming Territory, the Vance gang. They saw my face. They're hunting me. A sudden violent thunderclap shook the cabin. Roland was instantly on his feet. The animals. He was out the door and into the fresh, blinding micro-storm. Jessa found Roland collapsed by the cowshed. His work done. His skin radiating unnatural cold. You don't get to die on my property saving a few cows. She spat, her voice thick with unshed tears as she dragged him back to the cabin. We need you. The sentence, unfinished but fully understood, hung in the warm lamplit air. By mid-April the Great Three Forks Road was open. Finn asked at breakfast, his small face a mask of hope. Mr. Roland, will you stay for the spring plowing? Roland promised to stay, just until the planning was finished. At Sunday service in Oakhaven, the sight of Jessa walking down the aisle with Roland fueled a firestorm of gossip. The Reverend Silas Thorne visited the homestead that week. The community speaks, Jessa. You must think of appearances. I think of their safety and their laughter, Reverend, she said. Roland provides both. That afternoon, Roland taught Finn how to sit a saddle properly. Later, he showed Alara how to mend a torn book. You're good at this, Roland, Jessa observed from the porch. Practice, he said, his voice flat. I used to make wooden whistles for my boy. Days later, Roland planted a young birch sapling near the property line. He was planning a future. I've been a ghost for 5 years, Jessa, he told her that night. Your children are teaching me how to be a man again. Then stay, she whispered. Be alive here with us. In Oakhaven's saloon, Thomas's rival, Mr. Vernon, listened intently to a man asking about a bounty. Vernon's eyes glittered. At the general store, Mrs. Perkins cornered Jessa. Disgracing your late husband with a nameless drifter. Jessa turned, her voice sharp and ringing in the silence. Roland provides both. If that offends your sensibilities, madam, you are free to look away. Days later, Alara stumbled onto a patch of rotten ice over the creek. Roland plunged into the freezing water without a thought, hauling her out. Jessa worked all night. Finally, she broke, tears streaming down her face. I cannot lose another person I love. Not her. Not you. Roland reached for her hand. I promise you, I'm not leaving. When Alara was safe, Jessa found Roland by the creek bank. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. Their embrace a silent promise of future and commitment. The next morning, Finn asked, Mr. Roland, are you going to be our new papa? If he'll have us, Jessa replied. And if we can face the mountain of judgment that's coming. But that night, Mr. Vernon rode hard. 3 outlaws rode into Oakhaven. Jeb Vance, the leader, spoke to Reverend Thorne. We're looking for a man, Roland Vance. Mr. Vernon stepped forward. He's at Widow Thompson's place. Take him, and leave us in peace. The Vance gang arrived at the homestead as the sun dipped, staining the western sky a deep, ominous red. The 3 shadows against the dying light seemed almost supernatural in their menace. Jeb Vance rode his horse forward, stopping just outside the range of the porch lamp. His voice was a cold, cutting sound when he shouted, Roland Vance, step onto your porch. We know you're there. Roland stepped out onto the rough wooden planks, his posture tense, his hands hanging loosely at his sides. The silence that followed was heavy with held breaths. You have until dawn, Vance, Jeb called, his tone mocking. Clear out. Leave by dawn, or we gut every single person on this farm. Everything you touch turns to ash. You've proven that before. Then, with a harsh laugh that scraped across the yard, the 3 men turned their horses and rode away into the deepening twilight. Their promise hung in the air like a noxious smoke. Inside the cabin, Jessa found Roland moving with frantic, desperate speed, shoving spare shirts and essential items into an old saddlebag. The sight of his quick terror was a blow to her. What are you doing? She demanded, her voice rising in disbelief. What I should have done the minute the snow melted, he replied, not meeting her eyes. Leaving. No. She moved swiftly, seizing his arm, her grip iron hard despite his strength. We fight together. You won't abandon my children to the certainty of being orphans for a second time. He pulled his arm free, his face a mask of wrenching agony. "I'd rather they hate me alive for walking away," he choked out, his voice cracking with emotion, "than weep for me dead because I brought a gang of killers to their door." The old wound, the loss of his first family, was laid bare. "And you truly think running will protect us?" Jessa challenged him, moving to block his path to the door. "It won't, Roland. It will only destroy us from the inside, leaving them to wonder why the man who saved them abandoned them. It will only destroy us from the inside." But the terror and the guilt were too strong. He was already moving toward the barn. As the first pale light of dawn began to touch the eastern peaks, Roland was saddling his new mount. Finn woke, saw the figure, and ran screaming into the cold yard. "Papa, don't go!" The child's desperate plea was the first time he'd used that sacred word, a final, unbearable anchor. Roland heard it, but he couldn't let it stop him. He spurred the horse and didn't look back. Jessa found the locket on her kitchen table, a small circle of tarnished metal. Beneath it was a note scrawled on a scrap of paper. "Keep them safe. Forgive this coward." 2 days of silence followed, thick and crushing. Jessa hadn't spoken more than a necessary word. The children were utterly lost. Then, Jessa sought out Reverend Thorne. "You preach courage as faith in action, Reverend," she said, her voice steady. "I ask you now to have faith in us." She spent the day writing, speaking to the families Roland had helped during the planting, the fixed fences, the shared labor, the unspoken decency he had demonstrated. "We bring him home," Jessa declared to the small group gathered. "Then we face the Vances together." She went to the woodshed, and came back with Thomas's old rifle, checking the action with grim resolve. A small group of neighbors, stirred by her conviction, and their own sense of debt, assembled their mounts and firearms, standing with quiet solidarity. They rode out into the winding mountain roads. Roland was camped alone, in a high, isolated meadow, staring numbly into his fire, his gun in his lap. Then, the sound of hoofbeats. His hand clenched the grip of his pistol. He heard Jessa's voice ringing with an almost unbelievable authority in the wilderness. "You do not get to choose loneliness for us." She rode up with the others, dismounted, and walked straight to him. "You left because you are afraid, Roland. Afraid of losing us. Afraid of yourself. But hiding from love is not honor. It's just another way to let the past win." She gestured toward the handful of faces behind her, the neighbors who had chosen to ride to his defense. "We choose you, all of us. Now you choose us back." Roland looked at the faces, worn but resolute, and finally saw the reflection of the man they saw. Years of grief and running seemed to pour out of him. He stood taller, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "Then I stay," he said, his voice thick with a new, powerful emotion. "And we fight together." They turned and rode back toward the homestead, where their destiny awaited. The Vance gang returned at sunset. They expected one man cowering and alone. They found a determined, armed community. Reverend Thorne stood, a symbol of defiance. Gunfire erupted immediately, the air filled with sharp reports. Roland's military training showed. His movements were precise, efficient. Jessa, shoulder to shoulder with the Reverend, fired. The bullet tore Silas Vance's hat off. The Reverend took a slug but gripped his weapon. Roland cornered Jeb Vance, a clear kill shot. The old Roland would have executed him. The new Roland chose differently. He shot the pistol cleanly from Jeb's hand. "You will stand trial," Roland declared, lowering his gun. "I am done with death." The gang was quickly overwhelmed and captured. Vernon's treachery was exposed by Ray Vance. His punishment was absolute banishment, a judgment colder than any prison. As the light faded, Jessa took Roland's hand, a silent vow of survival and future. Finn ran to him shouting, "Papa!" Roland lifted him with his good arm. Ilara joined the embrace. They stood, a family defined by courage before their defended home. 3 months later, under the warm sun of late July, they married beneath the small birch tree Roland had planted. Tiny tender leaves were flourishing, a fast symbol of their new life. "Do you take this woman?" the Reverend asked. Roland looked at Jessa, Finn and Ilara. "I take this family," he said, his voice thick with certainty. All of them. Forever. The vows included the children. Adoption papers were signed that morning. Roland's eyes shone with tears of joy. He placed a new photograph on the mantel. It sat beside the locket of his past. Jessa found him looking at both. "You don't have to choose, my love," she said. "They made you who you were. We are who you're becoming." "Both are true, Roland." Finn tugged his coat. "Papa, can I plant a pine tree next year?" Ilara chimed in. "Will we have a baby brother or sister?" "Maybe," Roland said, a full open smile curving his lips. "Would you like that?" They stood beneath the fragile branches. Some families are born. Others are chosen. The strongest are forged in love and fire, and they endure.